Mr.
Good
Manish, you can
afternoon,
start.
sir. Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
sir.
Good afternoon, Manish.
Yeah. So we can start. Girish will be joining in a few minutes, but I think we can start. Uh, uh,
Please go ahead because I have some time constraints today, so maybe I have to leave a little early.
sure, sir. All right. So very good afternoon to everybody at this joint capacity building workshop jointly organized by IBA and TERI. Uh, the As you all are aware, India is planning India has committed a long-term target of decarbonizing to become a net zero emission economy by 2070. A long-term strategy for this was already launched last year, and finance is going to play an important role. uh, there is a lot of debate. I'm right now at COP28 in Dubai. A lot of discussion here is around making sure that how finance flows to different sectors for implementing low carbon technologies. And in that context, we are doing this engagement today so that we have the financial sector uh, more informed about the different technologies. We will be focusing more on the steel sector and cement sector today. Uh, but of course, we can discuss about overall technological pathways to decarbonization as well during the question answer session. Um, the idea here is not just to brief the people in finance sector about technologies, but also to understand what kind of questions, concerns the financial sector has when it comes to low carbon technologies, and so that we can as knowledge institution from TERI, we can prepare much better information notes uh, and share with the financial sector, but also inform the industry that these are the concerns that the financial sector has, and understand, help them prepare better. This today's workshop is part of two workshop series. We will take this event as more mutual learning event for our better understanding of the key questions and landscape. And in coming month, we will plan an in-person workshop where we can discuss things in more granular detail. We are very happy that Indian Banks Association and particularly Mehta sir has so kindly agreed to work on this together. He has been a guide for us to understand the landscape of financial sector. Without further ado, I would request Mr. Mehta to give his opening remarks. Mr. Mehta, please.
Thank you, Terry, represented by Manish and Girish today for joining us in this capacity building workshop. All the participants are fully aware about the declaration made by our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, about meeting out our energy requirements by 2030. The 50% can come from the renewable sources. So the remaining 2070 target for zero emission as already informed by Manish. And to achieve this goal, I think the entire ecosystem is working. And our Reserve Bank has already come out with a discussion paper inviting suggestions and the level of preparedness of the banking sector. I have no hesitation in admitting, and you all are bankers and the other participants, that we are still at a very nascent stage, very beginning stage, because we are at the awareness level. Banking sector so far has been talking about social responsibility, corporate governance, and climate risk. Was talked about it. It was factored into individually into the individual loan proposals, but as a policy, this was not adopted by the banking system. And we want that IBA should collaborate with all the knowledge partners, those who have knowledge and working in this area, first to create an awareness among all the participants of the banking sector, and then create a uniform standard which can be adopted by the banking sector. Because if the standards adopted are not uniform, then it will provide an arbitrage. An arbitrage in the sense, suppose one bank decides to go more aggressively about the green financing, and they prescribe certain covenants, they prescribe certain concessions and all that. And tomorrow when the same borrower wants to go to the another bank, and the another bank say, I have a different set of covenants, I have a different set, then a combined financing to a corporate may not happen, or it becomes all the more difficult for them to achieve a common goal. So there has to be a common platform where we can see what is green, and that taxonomy is worked out. Then how do we define it? So that taxonomy, I think Steel Ministry has already created some working groups which are working on the taxonomy, and similarly it is being worked about with the various departments, and the Ministry of Environment is also working, and there are other ministries which are carrying forward this agenda. So the moment the taxonomy is worked out and we are able to clearly define what is the green definition in the today's concept, because every country will have a different set of climatic condition, different kinds of climatic risk, and their definitions will also have to be customized as per their local indigenous requirements. And to achieve that final green, what was the different phases, like a shade of green in the beginning, or the greater green in the land, that can be a transit financing landscape which may have to pursue. So to create that landscape, I think we need to work out what are the requirements to be call any project as a green, may it be a greenfield project, may it be a brownfield project, and to achieve that greening of that sector, maybe green steel, then what are the technologies which are suitable? And the technology can also not be same, it has to be different. A DRI plant will have a different technological requirement, a secondary steel plant will have a different technological requirement. To achieve that green taxonomy, to achieve the technology that can be adopted, and to find the financial solutions for it, because any adoption of technology will require NS cost, and that cost need to be absorbed by the project in its viability. And then how do we as a banking system incentivize this? So as a banking sector, we have taken it up with the government to provide, and maybe our got an opportunity to work to head a finance group, green steel financing group for the Ministry of Steel. So we have come out with the three things, like what can be innovative financial product we can introduce for funding of the green steel, then what are the enablers which the government can provide, maybe the way it was provided in the form of tough subsidy, maybe in this. So those are the enablers, maybe in the form of some guarantee schemes, maybe in the form of some incentives in the capital incentive, as well in capital incentive, or maybe the incentive in the form of adoption of the technology, and interest compulsory subvention in the form of which is given the tough subsidy. So these type of modalities need to work together to achieve this. So as a banking sector, we are working that how do we provide an enabling financial environment which can facilitate our transition from existing fuel-based energy systems to the green energy-based system, where we can convert our existing economic activities to be on the greener side of it. And that is necessary not only from the declaration point of view. We owe a great responsibility to our next generation. We have to adopt an approach which can not only facilitate us in sustaining our business in long run, but sustaining the environment, so that we can give the same type of environment to our next generation, and they are able to enjoy the same type of facilities. So we owe that responsibility also. So I think today's workshop will definitely work on these ideas. I will hear the different experts. There will be peer-to-peer knowledge learning. Every bank is doing and started designing after the after this RBI discussion paper. Now banks are gearing up, because ultimately we have to embed it into our risk writing standards. we have to embed it into the underwriting standards, and for that, a common approach will have to be adopted, for which IBA is committed to work with all the stakeholders, including the knowledge partner. And one of the mandate given to us by RBI is capacity building. So we are getting involved with a large number of institutions like AFD, that is a Paris-based agency, which is helping us and sharing the knowledge. Carbon 4, TERI is a very important knowledge partner in the steel sector. We are working closely in that working group with the TERI, and they are providing their input. So similarly, there are other knowledge partners who are sharing their knowledge with us, which we are disseminating to our member banks. Once awareness is created, a knowledge pool is created, then we can connect the dots and create a roadmap for transition from the existing way of financing to the green financing. How do we incentivize green deposits? How do we incentivize green lending? How do we, whether some banks have already started doing it by providing some incentive to the electrical vehicles instead of the traditional fuel-based vehicle. So similar adopts will have to be adopted by the system in a holistic way. I'm definitely sure that today's deliberations will pave the way in this direction, and we'll be able to come out with some concrete suggestions to move in this direction so that they can create a uniform standard for the banking industry. Thank you all for joining this webinar today, and thank you, TERI, once again for giving me this opportunity to share my initial thoughts. Since I have some other pressing requirements, I may have to move out, but I hope the today's interactions and deliberations on my team, Mr. Chandrasekhar, Madam Spurti, they will be participating with you, participating in deliberation, sharing the IBA perspective with all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your opening remarks and laying out the kind of a roadmap for financial sector. And I'm sure this will further help us go forward in this interaction that we are trying to facilitate between industry and financial sector. May I now request Mr. Girish Sethi. He is a program director energy at TERI. He has more than 3 decades of experience of working with industry and promoting technology adoption. So without further ado, for his remarks, Mr. Girish Sethi.
Yeah, so thanks, Manish, I think, for this brief introduction. So let me also start by, am I audible, I guess, I think, Manish? Everybody
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
sir.
okay. Yeah. So let me start also by thanking the IBA for partnering with TERI in organizing this online workshop, and I'm sure I think this will be not the only one. We should, I would presume, this should be a start of a longer term association, a formal association with IBA in taking forward this initiative in the coming months and years as well. Now, of course, we have in the past some interaction, but I think this is the first time in a way we are doing it in this way, that we are trying to give our impressions, at least on these 2 sectors in today's talk about steel and cement, in terms of giving a broader overview of where the technology stands today and how it should be moving forward as India plans to decarbonize these highly energy intensive, carbon intensive sectors. So just a bit of the background, I think the way we are approaching this whole work as TERI, I think I would just briefly mention is that, of course, we have been working in the entire domain of energy transition for many, many years now. And we know how the supply side is decarbonizing. I think the banking sector has been quite active in supporting the transition to cleaner fuels on the supply side, whether it is solar based technologies, whether it's the ground mounted systems, or whether we are talking about solar rooftop for smaller applications, or even for the wind and other applications, even the biomass and all. But that's all on the supply side. But I think as India has committed, and like many other countries have committed to a net zero economy, we are talking about a very, very long-term commitment of 2070. But I think what is important to note is that although the commitment is a long-term commitment, but one has to start moving in these energy-intensive, carbon-intensive sectors if one has to ensure that, yes, the country moves on the path of 1.5 degree, and we also are able to achieve those long-term commitments. So in line with those, we all know that by 2030, we have those enhanced NDCs. There is a commitment, of course, on the renewable energy. There is a commitment on the reduction in the energy, in the emissions intensity, up to 45% based on the 2005 numbers. But what exactly that translates into specific sectors, specific areas, that's extremely important to know. So I think this discussion, what we are having today, and as TERI, we have started working also on these sectoral things. And steel is one sector where we have been working for, I would say, at least 2 to 3 years. There is a roadmap document which TERI had prepared last year, which is, and the brief gist of that work which we did on the technology roadmap will be presented by my colleague Shobhan just immediately after I close my remarks. And similarly, on the other important sector is the cement sector. It's a fairly large sector in India. India is one of the largest producers of cement. And these two sectors, cement and steel, if one really looks at it from the industry, they are almost contributing to around, I think if I'm not wrong, 30 to 40% of the total emissions from the industry sector as a whole. Although industry contributes around 50% to the total, but these two sectors total, both of them would be fairly large sectors, and the country is growing. We have numbers where we're talking about tripling and quadrupling our capacities over the next 30 years in these two segments. And I think what is important is to see that the new greenfield plants which come up are equipped with the latest state-of-the-art technologies. With the new technologies which are in the horizon, of course, there are risks involved at that stage. But also equally important is the need for the existing facilities to really upgrade their operations and start adopting those efficient technologies or renewable energy options wherever it is possible at the captive level. So I'll not get into much of detail on this. Maybe my colleagues can just initially give those 10 to 15-minute presentations, and then I guess, Manish, this is the way you want to have some interactive session after that. We can respond to some of the questions which the participants might be having. But I would just leave this one thought that what is very clear is that this is just a broader pathway which we will be talking about. But what is important is that as TERI has worked quite a lot, we keep on working with the individual factories on the adoption of these cleaner options. The answers are very different at each factory level. This is a broader pathway what we talk about. But for each factory, it's not possible always to, like very clearly, just an example in the steel sector that when we talk about, I think it was mentioned in the initial remarks, that if we are talking about a DRI plant, what can be adopted there in the DRI plant and what can be adopted in the BF blast furnace large integrated plant would be different. Similarly, I think, I know Shobhan is not going to touch on the rolling side, but if there are so many large steel rolling mills in the country, there is definitely an option, there are opportunities lying in these sectors. That is also steel sector. So those, and I think most of the bankers who are part of IBA, they are present at the local level, and all these steel makers who are in the downstream operations in these clusters in Eastern India, in Southern India, also in North India and some of the places where they have induction furnaces and all, their other technology options would be different. So I think it's important for the community, those who are involved in providing these financial loans or assessing the plants, to really have at least a broader idea of these segments of within the steel, although we call it a steel, but that is within the steel also there are so many sub-segments. So I just wanted to leave with these couple of thoughts and look forward to a more collaborative program and partnership with IBA as we move forward in the coming months and years. So back to you, Manish.
Thank you, Girish, for this overview of the sector, and I think it's important for the financial institutions to also have a broader sense of where the demand for resources could come from. This is not always going to be big players, but there are many smaller players also who would be reaching out to banks and other financial institutions for financial requirements, and it would require that appropriate financial products are available, and also understanding of the complexities at different scales to properly assess different project proposals. Thank you once again for all the participants. As we the plan of this session is that we will have two background presentations. One on the steel sector by Mr. Sobhan Babu, who is a senior fellow at TERI and has more than 3 decades of experience in the sector. And the other presentation would be on cement sector, that would be given by my colleague Taruna Idnani. She is project manager, corporate climate actions here. And that then would provide us hopefully a background within which or a common set of information on the basis of which we can take conversation forward. I think it is now very well established practice and understanding that in online events, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll call upon you. Or during the presentation, also you can write your questions, observations, and comments using the chat option. We will have about 30-35 minutes for presentations, and the remaining time we will use for discussion, taking inputs, questions, answers, comments from all the participants. And I'm really very happy to say that the number of attendees are more than 60. So that shows the growing interest in the financial industry as well. But before I go on to request Sobhan Babu for his presentation, I see that Mr. Swadesh Mishra has his hand raised for quite some time. So Swadeshji, if you could quickly say what you wanted to say. Hello, Swadesh Mishraji, are you there? All right, maybe he's I see some his microphone is muted. So well, then let's get going. Sobhanji, over to you for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sobhan Babu, working in the Industrial Energy Efficiency Division as Senior Fellow. And I will be presenting the technology options for decarbonization of the steel sector. So I'll take you through the various options and what is the current status of these technologies and the potential for reaching out to the target of net zero. Next slide, please. Yeah, I would like to begin my presentation with a brief introduction to TERI's work in the steel sector and also on the hydrogen. Girish has already briefly mentioned about it in his talk just before me. TERI has been working in the energy and environment sectors for the last three and 3.5 decades in the steel sector. The initial activities were in the form of conducting energy audits, mainly in the clusters of secondary steel industry, conducting the energy audits, doing the energy analysis, drawing the energy saving options, cost benefit analysis, and action plan for these industries. So that is how the TERI's journey began in the steel sector, and it built on this experience, and it worked in almost all secondary steel clusters across the country. Following up this, TERI also developed designs of energy efficient technologies specifically for the secondary steel industry, and also facilitated pilot projects, demonstration projects, and worked further on the policy briefs for implementing these technologies. So that is how TERI built its experience in the steel sector, specifically over the 3.5 decades. And as Girish mentioned, last 5 years, TERI's focus has been mainly on the decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sectors, where steel is again one of the prominent sectors. So as part of TERI's very detailed work, TERI brought out the consultation document for the iron and steel sector. You can see the document that TERI published on the right-hand side, the top corner side, on the left corner. So towards a low-carbon steel sector, it looked at various low-carbon pathways for the low-carbon steel sector, looked at emission scenarios, and then suggested the possible pathways. So following this, TERI further brought out another publication on green hydrogen-based steel making, because in the first publication, it touched upon various pathways, including green hydrogen, and in the second publication, the green hydrogen was much more focused, and various technical aspects, policy aspects were brought out in the document that was released in August 2021. And based further to iron and steel sector work, TERI actively engaged and done a lot of pioneering work in the green hydrogen segment as well. TERI brought out several publications for green hydrogen applications in the key sectors. It is the transport sector, industry sector, power sector, and within the industry sector, again, it focused on iron and steel, petrochemicals, fertilizers, and other key sectors where hydrogen can find its applications. So TERI has been deeply involved in the iron and steel and the green hydrogen activities for the past few years. Next, please. And taking this work forward, TERI has come out with another publication, another work, which is primarily based on a lot of consultations with stakeholders. And this publication is Achieving Green Steel, a Roadmap to a Net Zero Steel Sector in India. In my next slides, I will be presenting key aspects, mostly on the technology aspects of coming out from this net zero steel roadmap that TERI has prepared. So while preparing this, TERI consulted various stakeholders, including the industry, both from the large industry as well as the secondary steel industry, technology providers, financial sector, knowledge partners, and other key players. So all these publications which you have seen in the slides that I'm presenting, you can have them on TERI website. Yeah, so that is briefly about TERI. And for, in addition to the projects that I mentioned, TERI is continuing to work in this segment. We have been working on the hard-to-abate sectors decarbonization pathways, again on steel, cement, and many other hard-to-abate sectors. We are also part of the task forces which Ministry of Steel constituted. There are 13 task forces. 14 rather, there is an update, one more task force has been added, total 14 task forces, out of which TERI has been the knowledge partner for seven of the task forces set up for net zero steel industry for India. And so that, and then there are other projects TERI has been actively involved doing a lot of deep dive studies in the steel sector. Now that is about TERI and TERI's work and involvement in the steel sector. Now I would like to start with the Indian steel industry background. Can you go back, please? I would like to start this sectoral presentation with a brief introduction to the sector. I don't know how many of you are aware about the sector. As Girish said, you know, steel industry has a lot of contribution to the Indian economy, infrastructure development and industrial development. On the right-hand side, you can see the key attributes of the Indian steel industry, leaving apart the figures of its production and crude steel production and capacities. You see that the Indian steel industry is the second largest producer of crude steel, and not only in the production, we are also the second largest consumer of finished steel after China. And the sector becomes much more prominent and of significance because the energy share in the production cost is huge, 20 to 40%. The range is also, you see that it is very wide, 20 to 40%. This is because the sector has both the large industries which are little more energy efficient to the secondary steel industry where the efficiency levels are very low. So this makes the steel industry much more important to look at and focus for decarbonization. And that is about the energy consumption part. But you can also see that with the 10 to 12% of contribution to CO2 emissions, the steel sector again gets its prominence. And the sector also consumes around 1/4 of total industry's energy consumption, which is about 75 million tons of oil equivalent in terms of oil equivalent. So this makes the sector more, you know, focus as far as the decarbonization is concerned. And on the left-hand side, you can see that there is a share of steel production. I would like to share with you that the Indian steel industry is more heterogeneous, more diverse compared to any country in the world because of the different routes it takes both for iron making as well as the steel production. So in the chain of steel production, we will see that the iron making comes first and followed by the steel production. So in the pie, you can see that the major chunk is coming from the large industries, which are blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace, BF, BOF, what we call shortly, is about 50%. So 50% of the steel production comes from this route, which is predominantly in the hands of 5 to 6 large corporates like, you know, the SAIL, Tata's, Jindal's, AMLS, ArcelorMittal, and JSPL. So that is the blast furnace route contribution, and the balance 50% is coming from mainly the secondary steel industry, which constitutes electric arc furnaces and induction furnaces. So this composition of steel production by different routes makes India very unique, where in other countries you see it is predominantly BF-BOF or electric arc furnaces. So that is about the steel production. Well, we have also another peculiar aspect of the Indian iron industry. So besides the BF industry, nearly 30 to 40% of steel production comes from the coal-based DRI industry. Yeah, please. So I'll explain coal DRI industry in the next slide. In the next slides. So we have seen a diverse nature of the industry, both in terms of routes, energy consumptions. In this slide, you can see how the emission intensities vary across the steel industry, depending on the route or the technology or the fuel mix that is used. On the first, you see the coal-based DRI, electric arc furnace, induction furnace route has a high emission intensity. This is defined in terms of tons of CO2 that is released per ton of crude steel that is produced in this route. So this varies from 2.8 to 3 tons of CO2 per TCS. And as you see, as you move towards the right, the other technologies have lesser emission intensity. Blast furnace route has a slightly less, 2.3 to 2.6, followed by natural gas based DRI electric arc furnace route, which has 1.2 to 1.4. Here I would like to draw your attention. You can see in the first bar that the coal-based DRI has a very high emission intensity of 2.8 to 3, whereas natural gas-based DRI is nearly half the emission intensity compared to the coal. Unfortunately, 80% of our DRI, which is direct reduced iron, which is produced in the solid form, is coming from the coal-based DRI. So that makes our iron making more emission intensive. We have very few plants of natural gas-based DRI plants in India. There are a handful of them. Then the fourth bar, you can see that 100% scrap in electric arc furnaces and induction furnaces, which is one of the lowest that we can see. This is the scrap that is actually, this is the steel scrap received from various end user segments like the automobiles or construction sectors. If the scrap, 100% scrap is used, then the emission intensity is around 0.56. Then the last route that you see with the zero emission intensity is green hydrogen based DRI EAF. This is one of the most prominent technologies, deep decarbonization technologies. Not only India, the entire world is looking at as the solution for decarbonization. So we will talk about this more in the coming slides. So this particular slide shows the variation in the emission intensity across various routes in India. The next slide, please. Then I mentioned in my last slide about the DRI sector. So this primarily comes in the secondary steel category. Nearly 30 to 40% of iron is produced from this route. The balance is produced from the blast furnace route. So this is mainly the secondary steel segment. Here you can see where the data, the figures about the capacity and production figures, and also the distribution in terms of large, small, and medium categories. You can see in the capacity column that coal-based plants have a capacity of 42, whereas the gas-based plants have 12. So So in the DRI segment alone, the coal-based plants are more dominant. There are reasons. Most of the coal-based plants are very small plants. You can see below that there is a categorization, small, medium, and large. So the coal-based plants are very small plants in terms of production, in terms of capacities, in terms of technology and automation. Whereas the gas-based plants are anywhere from 0.8 million tons capacity to 2 million tons capacity, but with a limited production capacity of around 12 million tons, as you see in the table. Next slide, please. So that is about the DRI segment of the steel industry sector. So this will mainly give you an idea of how the steel making is in India and what are the main technology routes. How is the emission intensity? Emission intensity is very closely related to the energy intensity and the fuels that are used. So that is why I have not focused on energy aspects of the steel routes. So now coming to this slide, as I mentioned in my previous slides, TERI actually has come out with the roadmap for net zero steel sector. This was published in 2022. That talks about various pathways for net zero till 2070. You can see various milestones in this roadmap that TERI has prepared. You can see that the whole the decarbonization discussion started with the national steel policy in 2017 in terms of a policy document that more focused on what are the targets up to 2030. And then in the roadmap, you can see as you move forward, there are policies like steel scrap recycling policy in 2019, and then there is various research publications that support these technology pathways and details aspects. Then in terms of interventions that are required, these are much more important. I would like the participants to focus a little more on the technologies because this is what is actually requires capital investment and OPEX. So on the roadmap, you see that the first intervention is maximizing energy efficiency. Then as we move on, the other important technological intervention to reach net zero is increase the scrap utilization. These are the two low cost short-term measures, I would say, in the roadmap to net zero. And as we move forward, these two routes like scrap utilization or energy efficiency are short-term measures, but with a little contribution to the net zero decarbonization. But we need to look at more deep decarbonization options. So in the roadmap, you see these long-term measures which need a lot of R&D. I would like to bring to your attention that the steel sector is so peculiar that the deep decarbonization technologies, most of them are in the R&D stage, in pilot stage, in demonstration stage with low technology readiness levels. These are futuristic technologies. So a lot of R&D and demonstration is required. That is also suggested as an important strategy for decarbonization. And then with the R&D and demonstration projects, we expect to achieve commercial scale facilities in the future from 2040 or 2050 towards 2070. This is broadly about the roadmap, which has the technological interventions broadly categorized and what are the policy measures that would require. You will also see, besides the technologies, you would also see, as Mr. Mehta mentioned in his a brief talk about the taxonomy. So we need the green product standards are also very important, and the public procurement targets are also there. So this is a combination of both technology as well as the policy requirements. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more focusing on the technology, because I think we need, as the bankers, as the financial institutions, a little bit more understanding of the technologies under various categories is required. So in this slide, you can see measures which are short-term, medium-term measures, and then the long-term measures, which are mainly the deep decarbonization technologies. In the short-term, medium-term measures or technologies, the first one that one should focus is energy efficiency improvement. So there are a number of best available technologies for energy efficiency improvement, both in large industries and secondary steel industry. And the second option is increasing the scrap utilization. Currently, our utilization is 20% of scrap. There is by increasing the scrap utilization, we can definitely reduce the carbon emissions. In the world, the scrap utilization percentage is more than 35%. Then the third is renewable energy for electrical energy supply. So a lot of the plants have their own captive power plants, and also in addition to that, they also draw grid power. So meeting these electrical energy requirements with renewable energy, either solar or wind or biomass, can substantially reduce the carbon footprint of electrical energy generation. Then the fourth option under the short and medium is natural gas-based DRI plants replacing the coal-based DRI plants. As I mentioned, 80% of the DRI currently comes from coal-based plants, which are more polluting and highly energy intensive, whereas the natural gas-based DRI plants have lesser energy consumption, nearly half of the emission intensity. In the long term is more deep decarbonization technologies. These are primarily at low technology readiness levels. Either it is carbon capture utilization. CCU is carbon capture utilization, and CCUS is utilization and storage. So promoting CCU and CCUS, where the utilization of fossil fuels cannot be avoided, there the solution could be capturing this carbon dioxide emissions for either storage or utilization. Then the most prominent of the deep drive technologies everybody is looking at is green hydrogen based DRI. Gradually shifting the production from blast furnace BOF route to green hydrogen DRI, because green hydrogen DRI has practically zero CO2 emissions. So that is also a major option that that one should look at. And then the blast furnace route is totally dependent on fossil fuels like coal, coke. So the option for existing blast furnaces, which has a life of around 40 years, is carbon capture and utilization for converting to biofuels or biochemicals. So yeah, next slide. On the right hand side, you see the table with the technology readiness level of all these options and also the reduction potential. So you can see that the green hydrogen DRI has a 90% potential, and there is another technology which is molten oxide electrolysis or direct electrification, also has 90%, more than 90%. These are highly futuristic technologies. Of course, green hydrogen DRI plants are coming up. Yeah, next slide, please. This I have already covered. The 5 pillars include energy efficiency, maximizing utilization of scrap from the current level of 20 to 30, 35% or even more, depending on availability. R&D is required for deep decarbonization technologies, and that is all about production of green steel. However, we would need to stimulate demand from demand for low carbon steel. The stimulation of demand requires a number of policy measures from the government, and the government should also focus on these things. Next slide, please. Then maximize energy efficiency. This is one of the first measures I mentioned. The potential is high, 20 to 25%. Low hanging opportunity because the investments are low, the payback periods are attractive, and there are readily available proven commercial technologies available. Next slide, please. Yeah, this graph shows the potential of energy efficient technologies, the potential for reducing the energy consumption and emission intensity, which is more than 30%. That is the best performing industries. Next slide, please. So the similar graph, this is for the DRI industry, how the potential for energy savings look like in the DRI production route. Next slide, please. And these are the various technologies. As I said, the best available technologies are already there, implemented to some extent, but the penetration level is still there, needs to be improved. For various reasons, they are still not achieving the best, but there is scope. These are some of the energy efficient technologies, but there are more which can be added. This is for integrated steel plants. The next slide shows the energy efficient technologies for the secondary steel industry. Some more, as you can see, most of these technologies focus on waste heat recovery because the gases that come out from various processes, equipment of steel and iron production are at high temperatures. So the best way is to capture and utilize them either for thermal energy or electrical energy requirements. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, these are already proven, commercially available, but as you can see, the penetration level or adoption level or diffusion level is still very low. Even in the technologies where the adoption diffusion level is showing high, the implementation level still can be improved in PCI as well as converter gas recovery. Yeah, next slide, please. That is all the story about energy efficiency. The second I mentioned as an option is a scrap utilization. The graphs show how scrap, 100% scrap utilization for steel making can have an impact on raw materials reduction by 85% and energy reduction by 70%. And then emission intensity, you see that around 85%. So this is the advantage of using 100% scrap, but scrap utilization has its own limitation. The first of the limitations is its availability and price in India. Next slide, please. Then these are the long-term decarbonization technologies, which I already mentioned in the previous slides, which include CCUS, green hydrogen, molten oxide electrolysis, and a few other futuristic technologies which require a lot of R&D, demonstration, and further commercialization activities are required. Government of India need to come out with a strategy which would really look at the commercialization aspects of these technologies. Next slide, please. As I already mentioned this, both the supply side and demand side supply side push require a lot of policies. Right, as Mr. Mehta said, I would like to quote it again. It requires taxonomy, standards, defining the standards, and then creating the demand for the green steel through public procurement, or for when we talk about the private sector buyer clubs, which are there in some of the countries. Next slide, please. This I have already mentioned. The hydrogen route. There are primarily two major options. Is the hydrogen-based route where the fossil fuels can gradually over a period of time can be shifted to hydrogen. So achieve net zero in that route. The second option is primarily for the blast furnace basic oxygen BF-BOF route, where it is hard to eliminate the fossil fuels utilization. Hydrogen can be blended to some extent, but a small extent, but still there will be a lot of CO2 emissions. For that, the option is go for CCUS route so that net zero can be near net zero can be achieved. Next slide, please. So then in this slide you can see the green hydrogen. Currently, some of you may be aware that the green hydrogen production is not existing in India. Maybe it is there in small pockets for specific requirements, but the costs are very high. Not only in India, globally it is very high, $6 to $7. But for steel making, for green hydrogen to be economical, it has to be less than $2 or around, it should be around $1. So the government of India is targeting to achieve this by 2030, but looking at how the corporates like Adani, Reliance and other public sector companies are moving, L&T and public units, India seems to achieve $2 or less than $2 rate quite earlier than 2030. I would like to sum up this steel sector presentation with this slide that shows that the first set of technologies to be focused are energy efficiency, scrap utilization, and renewable energy for power generation. But to achieve the net zero, we would need deep decarbonization technologies. On the last slide, you can see last bar 2070. You see the major contribution coming from scrap and BF-BOF along with CCUS, because the BF-BOF cannot be eliminated totally by 2070 because these have 40 years, 50 years life, and once these are established, they will be continuously operating. And then there is a small share for molten oxide electrolysis and a big share for green hydrogen based DRI electric arc furnace route. So yeah, these technologies depending on the commercial scale or they are at R&D require huge investments and innovative financing mechanisms. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you so much. That is what I would like to present for the steel sector. Manish, over to you.
Thank you, Sobhan ji, for this very informative presentation. I would, before I would go to Taruna for the presentation on cement sector. In case any of the participants have any burning question to Sobhan Babu on the macro picture, you can quickly ask or type in the chat box. I see there is one question which is more specific about pelletization. Here, whether pelletization plant is useful in achieving zero emission steel. Yeah, so Sobhanji, if you could quickly respond to this, and then we move to next presentation.
Yeah, yes, it is a very important question. Pelletization is very essential in the context of two aspects. One is that, as we know, our iron ore is gradually moving towards low Fe content. As our production levels are increasing, the Fe content is coming down gradually. So there is need to beneficiate our iron ore and then pelletize it. Pelletization is required for both the BF, BOF routes as well as the DRI plants. And as we are targeting green hydrogen as a decarbonization lever, the green hydrogen DRI requires pellets. Pellets is very important. High grade pellets are important. So pellets definitely contribute a lot for decarbonization goal.
Okay, there are now many questions coming in. So what I would suggest that, well, let me give you those two questions also here for Shobhanji to quickly respond, and then we move to the next presentation and we'll take other questions in the question answer round. So there is a question from Maharnav, Mr. Maharnav. He's asking whether coal bed methane can be used in blast furnaces and DRI as alternative injection material to reduce carbon intensity. There is another question about the alternative sources to coal, whether they will that is perhaps more import of high quality coal is an option, and the possibility of biofuel in BF BOF route. So these are three quick points. If you could just summarily respond to them, and then more details we can discuss in the second round.
Sure. Yeah. Coming to the first question on coal bed methane, yes, I think the coal bed methane availability is limited to certain areas where the coal mining is going on, and some plants are already working towards utilizing coal bed methane in the blast furnaces. So it is, and it's a cleaner fuel. I mean, it's a gaseous fuel. Definitely, it impacts emissions of the steel, iron making or steel making, and I think there are some agreements are also getting signed between the producers of the coal bed methane and the users, so that the supply of CBM is assured for utilization. It will definitely reduce the emissions intensity, definitely in the interim. But however, it is all said and done, it is a fossil fuel. So we have to look at more greener options like green hydrogen or CCUS in case if fossil fuels adoption cannot be avoided. Then coming to the next question is comparison available. Yeah, okay, alternative sources of coal and impact on reducing emissions. Yeah, I think, yes, the utilization of cleaner fuels in place of coal is at a very nascent stage. Nowadays, everyone is talking about utilizing biochar in blast furnaces by reducing the coal PCI. So experiments are going on in the blast furnace route, and on the similar lines in the DRI, currently the technology used is horizontal. In place of coal, utilization of biochar or biocoal is also at experimental stage. Some IITs are working on this in collaboration with industry.
Yeah, thank you, Sobhanbabu. There are two more questions, but they are more about the cost and finance. And I think those questions are also equally relevant for the cement sector. So we'll take those questions after the presentation on cement sector. So now I would request Taruna to give her presentation on decarbonization technology roadmap for the cement sector. Over to you, Taruna.
Thanks, Manish. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taruna Idnani, and I work with TERI Council for Business Sustainability, which is a division in TERI which works as an interface of TERI's research work with corporates. Today, I'm going to be speaking about the technologies for the decarbonization of the cement and concrete industry. So next slide. So basically, I'll be giving an overview of the global and Indian cement industry. Then at TERI, we are also working with Global Cement and Concrete Association to develop a roadmap for the Indian cement sector and what are the potential levers for decarbonizing the cement sector in India and what are the key enablers for decarbonization of the cement sector. So when we talk about the cement sector, as you all know, cement is the foundation. Cement and concrete industry is basically serves as the foundation for modern infrastructure. Hence, it has a massive global impact on both the energy demand and carbon emissions. And globally, cement sector is projected to grow. And it is projected that up to 2030, it is going to grow at a CAGR of 5.1%. And presently, it is an important contributor since it contributes 13% of the global economy, the global GDP. So it is an important contributor and it is deeply embedded in our societies and our economies as a basic requirement for the infrastructure needs and housing needs that we need. And as the population and the urbanization across the world would grow, the demand for the cement is projected to grow. So the key challenge here is how do we manage and how do we strike a balance between growing demand and at the same time decarbonizing the industry. And next slide. If we look at the Indian cement industry, we now know that Indian cement sector is one of the core industries in India, and it is the second largest industry in India in the world after China, representing about 8% of the total capacity. Whereas the present production is around 334 million tons, and 99% of the installed capacity is now using a dry, energy efficient dry processes, where it has shifted from wet process to dry process, and 99% of the installed capacity is now using the dry process in India. And there is also a strong impetus by Government of India on initiatives like PM Gati Shakti plan for multimodal connectivity, housing for all, smart cities. So as in Indian context, it is very likely that the demand for cement, because cement is a basic requirement of every Indian, like in the housing sector, cement is a basic requirement for every Indian. So how do we basically keep a balance between the demand and also ensuring the sustainability of the sector? And it has been projected that the investments in the manufacturing sector, which were announced this year, were 5 times that were announced in 2020. So it is very likely that the demand for the cement is going to grow in India. As a developing nation, we are going to build the infrastructure. But what are the routes for decarbonizing the Indian cement sector? How can we achieve low carbon pathway for the cement sector, and at the same time, achieve net zero emissions for the cement sector. And our Honorable Prime Minister announced Panchamrit targets at Glasgow at COP26, while we are at COP28. It was announced that India is going to achieve its emission intensity, is going to reduce the emission intensity of by 45%. And India will use non-fossil fuel capacity up to 500 gigawatts by 2030. India will meet 50% of its energy by renewable energy by 2030, and then India will also reduce the projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons from now till 2030. By 2070, India will reach net zero. So how do we basically align this with cement sector? Basically, so the key strategies are, I have mapped how the cement sector is going to contribute to achieving these Panchamrit targets is by energy efficiency improvements and clinker factor reduction, decarbonizing its electricity sector, use of alternative fuels and decarbonization of electricity, and also exploring the opportunities of nature-based solution. And lastly, by announcing net zero CO2 at concrete level by 2050. So a number of cement companies have already come forward and announced their net zero plans by 2050. But at TERI, we are also working. We are working on the roadmap with the Indian cement sector and with the Global Cement and Concrete Association to develop this roadmap and to see what are the kind of decarbonizing levers that are required for net zero cement and concrete sector. So for building this roadmap, we have taken a baseline of the year 2020-2021. So with this baseline, we are setting targets for decade of action to set things in perspective. That means in this decade, we are going to define some of the actions which the cement industry can take. Although cement industry is best in terms of energy efficiency and it has improved its energy efficiency in comparison to other sectors, but what are the kind of other actions that a cement industry can take in this decade to set the things in perspective and then move forward towards deep decarbonization initiatives by 2050. Next slide. So, the approach we followed was first was the identification of key drivers for transitioning and deep decarbonization by 2050. This included what are the key levers for deep decarbonization, and then how much reduction each lever can contribute for achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide. Next slide. So the key considerations we have taken in the roadmap are the business as usual scenario. Like if we consider that if the cement and concrete industry is projected to grow at a 6% CAGR up to 2030 and 4.5% CAGR from 2030 to 2050, then we considered 4 kinds of market segments for the cement sector. One is the ready-mix concrete, then bagged cement, mortar, and precast construction. So these are the 4 market segments that we considered, and the reduction or efficiency gains in concrete production and design and construction due to efficient use of concrete will have a major impact after 2030. So in this roadmap, we have considered the entire value chain of the cement and concrete industry and how it will decarbonize or how it will have a major impact after 2030 and what are the kind of technologies that would be adopted. Next slide. So in the graph, which you can see on your screen, shows a production of 33 million tons in 2020. And in business as usual scenario, if we grow, we would reach approximately 600 million tons by 2030 and 1440 million tons by 2050, according to our projections. But yes, if we apply those decarbonizing levers, if the cement sector integrates those decarbonization levers into the sector, it is possible to reduce the demand of cement by 2050 up to 1,000 million tons by 2050. So this is the kind of impact that cement sector can have if the decarbonizing levers are integrated or are adopted by the cement sector. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 market segments that we have considered for our roadmap. Here we are saying that the ready mix concrete, which is at a very the plants for ready mix concretes which are going to increase by 2050, whereas the bagged cement, the share of which is bagged, is going to reduce from 7% to 6%. And the share of mortar is going to increase, and the precast structures are also going to increase in future. Next slide. So in this roadmap, we have considered, we have taken the roadmap adopted by European Cement Research Association, and we have considered the levers as concrete levers, which is how the share of concrete would increase, design and construction, how the buildings are designed and how the buildings are constructed, what are the kind of impacts they are going to have. Then the cement and binders, how the usage of binders and supplementary cementation material would impact, and clinker emission factor. Clinker is a major product which is formed, and reducing the clinker emission factor is a key lever for decarbonizing the cement industry. So this we call it as a whole life model. So these are the analysis that we have done at TERI. To understand and to project what are the impact of these levers on the Indian cement sector. Next slide. So first, I'll be talking about the key levers to decarbonize the concrete industry and what are the kind of actions behind this lever. So first is concrete production. So right now, how the concrete is produced in the country matters. So we project that the share of basically the concrete is right now produced at the construction site, and the mixing of concrete takes place at the construction sites mostly, because the market, the price of ready-mix concrete is quite higher as compared to when it is made at the batching plants. So we project that the share of ready-mix concrete plants are going to increase in future. And the share of admixture is a ready-made material which is added to form concrete, and which increase the workability of the concrete sector. So the share of admixtures are going to impact the concrete production. Then aggregates, the sand and gravels which are used, and the grading curves of aggregates would impact the concrete production. Then quality control at ready-mix plants, then shift from bagged cement to ready-mix or precast elements, and reduction of water cement ratio. That is also important because this will have the amount, because these all factors would determine the amount of cement used for for production of concrete. So once we integrate these levers within the system, then the demand or the wastage reduction of the cement would reduce, and it would help in improving and achieving efficiency gains for concrete production. And we have projected, like our projections show that efficiency gains from concrete production could be responsible for reducing emissions up to 7.6% in 2030 and 11% in 2050. Then we come to design and construction. So how we design buildings, how we design infrastructure would matter a lot in future as we are going towards more automated methods and bringing digitization into the construction sector. The optimization of standards and how we use different standards for using the design elements, green building designs, and automated design methods. So all these elements would basically impact creating scenarios and what if scenarios for good building designs, which will ultimately impact the cement production or the cement use in the buildings, and that will have a major impact on the consumption of consumption of cement and reduction of wastage. So that would have extended service life and reuse of concrete elements. For example, there is construction and demolition waste. If that could be used during the construction process, that would also contribute and have a significant impact in the decarbonization of the sector. Next slide. Then I move to the key levers for decarbonizing the cement sector. So the major element for decarbonizing the cement sector is clinker production. So clinker is the main product which is formed, and it is responsible for the major CO2 emissions because clinker, when it is formed at the cement level, it consumes a lot of energy, and once we reduce the amount of clinker which is produced, then we could achieve a lot of emission reductions. So one is energy efficiency improvements in the production process, like using process optimization, clinker coolers, multi-channel burners, and integrating digitization methods. And secondly, the use of low carbon fuels or green fuels. Here, we would like to include low carbon fuels like alternative fuels, usage of municipal solid waste, use of green hydrogen, and use of biomass, and then also shifting towards scale electrification. So these are our projections for how the fuel mix trend would follow for the cement sector in 2020, 2030, and 2050. So according to our projections, at present, the usage of coal and petcoke in the cement sector is approximately 90%, which is going to reduce to 40% by 2050. And the share of alternative fuels, for example, the alternative fuels like the share of biomass, and there is a massive opportunity to use the fuels from fossil fuel origin like tire waste. So they are going to increase to about 50% in 2050. And we also envisage that the share of green hydrogen is going to go up with the launch of green hydrogen mission. It is now projected that we would have a green hydrogen infrastructure within our country, and cement industry could use up to 10% of green hydrogen by 2050. So as you can see in the graph, the share of fossil fuels would reduce significantly by 2050, while the share of non-fossil fuels, including biomass and municipal solid waste or other alternative fuels like green hydrogen are going to go up, which would have a major impact in reducing emissions from the industry. So in this, it is projected that specific energy consumption, which is the thermal energy consumption for the production of clinker, is going to reduce from 731 kilocalories per kg of clinker to 705 kilocalories per kg of clinker. So that means the consumption of thermal energy is going to reduce, and we project that Indian cement sector can embrace these technologies and adopt more energy efficient and achieve higher emission intensity targets by 2050. Similarly, the clinker factor, which is the amount of clinker as a percentage, would also reduce from 0.73 to 0.61 up to 2050, and it has a potential to reduce up to 15% of emissions by 2050. Next slide. Then we talk about the supplementary cementitious materials, which are basically used to prepare blended cements. So the share of blended cements in India has increased significantly. Up to 70% of blended cements are now used. And for the production of blended cement, we need supplementary cementitious materials, also called as SCMs. And we need fly ash, which is basically a byproduct of the power sector, and GGBS, which is granulated ground-based slag, which is a byproduct of the steel sector. So we wanted to see whether if India would shift towards blended cements by 2050, whether these supplementary cementitious materials would be available by 2050 or they won't be available. And we have projected that yes, the share of fly ash, the share of slag, and the share of calcined clay, all these supplementary cementitious materials would be available. According to our projection, they would be available, and there is a potential to increase the share of blended cements in India. This graph basically shows the share of blended cements and SCMs in the use of supplementary cementitious materials in cement and concrete. Next slide. And we have the new SCMs, which is LC3 cement. It has now adopted worldwide. It has now been introduced worldwide, and BIS has also come up with this with the standard for LC3. And we have projected that LC3 cement could have 10% of market share by 2050. Next slide. Then for decarbonization of the electricity in the cement sector, cement sector industries already implemented waste heat recovery plants for power generation, and also embracing the technologies for solar and wind as captive power plants or as third-party generation or open access. So we project that the specific energy consumption in electrical side would also go down by 2050. Then recarbonation is one of our levers which we have considered. Recarbonation is basically natural uptake of CO2 by concrete, and we have projected that the recarbonation as an accounting method for decarbonizing the cement sector is also a potential lever for decarbonizing the cement sector, and it could be one of the levers for India. Next slide. Then coming to carbon capture, utilization and storage, as Sobanji had already explained about the carbon capture, utilization and storage, It would have, this is a major technology lever for the cement sector as well. And it would have, it would help basically in reducing the emissions up to 32% by 2050. And Niti Aayog also has recommended that carbon capture finance financial framework should be developed to promote the pilot implementation of and the demonstration plans for the cement industry for the CCUS in India, which will basically identifying the technology gaps that exist across the value chain, as well as the infrastructure that is required. So right now we require the CCUS pilots for both cement and the steel industry. Next slide. And we also calculated the opportunities for nature-based solution. Through plantations or conservation of forests. So this is also an opportunity for India for carbon sequestration. And also cement sector could align its targets for reducing emission, for capturing CO2 carbon sequestration and also contributing to India's NDCs. So this could be one of the levers for the Indian cement sector to approach and to adopt nature-based solution as one of the levers. Next slide. So this is basically, if we integrate all the levers, we see that in 2020, if we have 225 million tons of CO2 emissions, and we project that societal demand emissions would increase to approximately 800 million tons, then it is possible by integrating all the decarbonizing levers, it is possible to decarbonize the sector by 2050 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So this is another representation of all the decarbonizing levers. But as you can see in the graph, the major lever would be the CCUS technologies, which would contribute approximately 32% of emission reduction. And then following that is the reduction through concrete production and design and construction, which would all contribute another 30%, and rest of the levers would contribute to various percentages of reduction by 2050. Next slide. So this graph basically shows how much we can reduce through different decarbonizing levers in 2030 and 2050. Next slide. Key enablers for the roadmap. So we envisage that we would require not only the technology, but also policy asks like mining the green cement, or increasing the popularity of LC3 cement, increasing the usage of municipal solid waste and introducing a tipping fee for it. So we have identified the policy asks, the technology, the immediate technologies that we need is basically the demonstration plans for CCUS and standards, use of standards, and also financing. Like we require a lot of financing, which is transition financing for the cement sector, premium for the net zero cement and concrete to create the demand pool. And how do we de-risk the investments for building the sustainable infrastructure in the country? Next slide. So so basically we would see how do we implement the roadmap. So basically creating a demand for green cement standards and definitions. It would be a mixture of market simulation and demand creation, and also financing, technology, and policy. So it would be a mix of technology, policy, financing, and also creating a demand for the green cement. Then lastly, I would like to conclude that collaboration is the key. We all need to come together as research institutions, knowledge partners, ministries, financial institutions, and international partners together to for decarbonizing the cement sector. Thank you. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you, Taruna, for this broad overview of what decarbonization in the cement sector may look like over the years. So now we have about 20 minutes for question answers, and if the participants are willing, we can perhaps extend it by another 5-10 more minutes. But let me come back to there are quite a few questions already there in the chat box. So let me come back to those uh, questions. And these questions are for both of you, Taruna and Sobanji. One is the question about if there is a comparison available on the investment required across the multiple technologies and expected return on investments. And other questions are related to more specific technologies such as CCUS, green hydrogen-based DRI technologies, uh, uh, and what is the additional requirement. But broad question is about the estimates on investment needs and probable return on investment. So your reflections on that aspect.
Yeah, coming to the question on the capex requirements of green hydrogen DRI. See, of course, as I mentioned in my presentation, I think there are a few plants that are coming up. I think these plants will be in commercial production by 2025 or 26 in Sweden and other countries. So we have the figures, some approximate figures for green hydrogen DRI production. That is, we have approximate figures because we don't exactly know what these costs include, right, in the DRI production. But the figures are around $2 to $2.5 billion for 1 million ton of crude steel production. Right, $2 to $2.5 billion for 1 million ton of crude steel production through green hydrogen DRI. We had discussions with a couple of technology providers. Worldwide, there are 2 technology providers for green hydrogen DRI. One is Tenova and the other one is Midrex. So we had discussions with them about the capex costs and opex costs. So what the information we got in terms of the costs is that for the case of India, the capex depends on what model of implementation that we are looking at. You see, if the companies like the large corporates like Tata Steel or JSW, MNS, they are very strong technical capabilities are there. Their engineering capabilities are strong. So perhaps a lot of engineering and construction works can be taken care by them, which will reduce their costs. So it depends on what model that the promoters will adopt. Either they will totally depend on the technology suppliers for entire construction, installation, commissioning, or they would like to take part of the work with technical specification from the suppliers. So the cost can come down in terms of the green hydrogen DRI plant. But the real point here is coming to the green hydrogen more than the capex. Capex, of course, there is a higher cost compared to the other conventional routes like BF. Currently, the issue is the price of green hydrogen. I mean, there are different figures floating around what is the cost of green hydrogen. It is, I think, anywhere between $6 to $7 or maybe slightly less. So the OPEX makes, as I said in my presentation, the cost of steel production becomes more economical if it is less than $2. So at this point of time, the availability of green hydrogen at a price that is economical is more important than capex. Capex, I think, can actually can be managed by looking at various options to reduce the cost.
And
Taruna, you want to add
yes,
anything?
yes. Thanks, Manish. Also, I would like to add that Reserve Bank of India, they had done some calculations for the cement sector. So they had calculated that if the emission intensity of the cement sector which is presently 0.72 tons of CO2 per ton of cement, would go down to 0.35 tons of CO2 per ton of cement, then India would require approximately 29 billion to 50 billion US dollars for the cement industry to decarbonize. So
Yep.
This includes all the technologies. This is the investment for the sector that is required.
Thank you, Taruna, for that broad macro figure, because that is important to know what is the size of financial market in each sector that we are potentially looking at. If I may just add 2 points quick, or basically 1 point quickly, that yes, the cost estimates about technologies are available, but those estimates need to be taken or considered with kind of a pinch of salt. There are two things that really determine both the cost as well as return on investment. One is the scale of deployment, and the other is combination of different technologies together. So, for example, as Sobhan Babu also pointed about hydrogen, you may think about only the furnace design cost, or you can also, if you are also including the cost of renewable energy that is being used to produce green hydrogen, or if you are also including the cost of carbon enhancement of the sponge iron produced, because these are the the process changes that would be required. So based on which component you are investing in, the total cost and return of returns would vary. Similarly, the question about CCUS is also again, the costs estimates range anywhere between 2,000 to 3.5 thousand crore for a 2 million ton capacity. Now, if you are operating at a lower scale, then also your minimum cost is this much. Or because otherwise, if you want to downscale the technology, then you will have to include R&D costs. That could be even higher. So these are the considerations. And of course, in the process of capturing as well as utilization, you would need energy. Where would that additional energy come from? What would be the source of it? Would imply the cost component of it. So this question is really not just about the cost of technology, but also at what scale the technology is being deployed, and accordingly the return on investment would be determined. So one has to ask a number of questions in order to finally determine what would be the actual cost of technology and return on investment. I think this also answers the question that was asked about the on the pilot basis to check financial viability. There is another question, Sobanji, is about if there any company which have used green technology in BF-BOF route even at the experimental level. Is there any example?
I think Tata Steel, Jamshedpur has an experimental project on hydrogen injection in their blast furnace. They injected up to 5% of hydrogen and they monitored the results in terms of CO2 reduction. But that is the only plant which blended or injected hydrogen in BF-BOF route. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's
all right. Then there is also question for the cement sector. I know, I think Girish is also here in the room, right? So the question about the non-energy route of emission reduction in cement sector. Um,
Non-energy, what is the question? Once again.
So non-energy related interventions for emission reduction in cement sector.
See, I think the way Taruna explained in the different levers, see, on the non-energy side, basically we are talking about the CO2 which is being emitted from the calcination of limestone. And that is a significant, those are process emissions. And as of now, other than carbon capture and utilization or storage, if that is an option, storage as well, there is nothing else what we can talk about in terms of non-energy CO2 emissions. Of course, things like the levers like efficiency in
Design and construction.
design of the buildings, efficiency in concrete production. These are the levers which have significant impact overall, but those are more of changes in terms of the practices which need to be adopted by the user industry, say the real estate sector, the construction sector, which of course is non-fossil fuel, but that is more at the building design and building construction practices. Of course, other is of course the lever I think which Taruna explained is on the moving away from conventional fuels to other alternative fuels and or increasing the share of fly ash or LC3 as a new binder, as a new polyolefinic material, which has been, that sounds a very interesting area for India because we are talking about a situation in the years to come when you might see a decline in the availability of fly ash as the thermal power production reduces. Of course, one doesn't see as per broad calculations any difficulty in that, but in the long term, the new cement standard, which has been already adopted by the Bureau of Indian Standards. It was just a few months back that this new standard was adopted. So one might see companies who are having a longer term view to start experimenting with this new cement. So these are all non-fossil fuel options. But of course, some people have also talked about hydrogen use in cement case, but that is, I think, very, very far away. People have not experimented it globally as well in a big way on that. So that could be just 20, 30-year horizon period which you're talking about.
Okay, thank you for this answer. There are two more quick questions, but I know that we have to close within next 5-7 minutes. Mr. Chandrasekhar ji has to leave. So if I could ask Girish you to very quickly respond to these two questions. One is the question of competitiveness of greener fuels. How do we deal with that question? And the other question is more specific about the electric kiln by rotodynamic heater technology in cement industry. What is the update on that? So if you could very quickly respond to these questions.
So on the competitiveness of the alternative greener fuels, of course, I think the one which is being talked about, I think presently everybody is talking about is only the role of hydrogen, the green hydrogen. And I think Shovan did briefly talk about the cost numbers. Today, of course, hydrogen is being produced by the steam methane reforming route, which is very much dependent on the price of the raw material, and in this case, the price of natural gas. And that we know is a commodity which is a very volatile commodity. We have seen how the prices have fluctuated over when the Ukraine war was happening, and even otherwise also natural gas prices are very volatile. So and hydrogen is today at a relatively higher price of $6-7, and unless and until we are able to bring down those prices, broadly what is said is that the if one is able to get it at $1.5 to $2 per kg as hydrogen, it can start becoming competitive with the existing technology. And then, of course, I think other greener fuels are biomass-based fuels, but again, that's a larger question on the availability of pellets and other residues on that. The second one, Manish, I think you mentioned about this electric kilns. I think as far as we know, I think these are very early days. I think people have talked about electrification of kilns. But yes, if there is a technological breakthrough, that could be a big game changer. But I think even that also, if I understand well, from my basic understanding of the cement sector, that we are talking here also only about, I think, the static part of it, say up to the calcination, up to 800 degrees centigrade, the precalciner can be perhaps converted, because the maximum the temperature at which the calcination happens is 850-900 degrees centigrade, and that is a static one. So that can go to the electric route, but the other one is within the rotary kiln. That will still remain a combustion unless we get some major breakthrough in something else, which I can't envisage at this stage.
Okay, thank you. So the path is filled with many ifs and buts. Now, I would now request that Mr. Chandrasekhar ji, who is a senior advisor at IBA. Sir, you have been listening to this discussion for about 2 hours now, and obviously you are co-host of this exercise, this engagement. I would request you to share your reflections as your closing remarks for this workshop. I'm sure there would be more questions afterwards, and we would like to receive them through electronic routes or email or feedback form, and have the next session with more focused exercises and information. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar ji, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. Mr. Girish Shetty, Mr. Shravan Babu, Mr. Tarun Nidhanani, all from TERI. Dear colleagues, first and foremost, we would like to thank the officials from TERI for coming here and sharing their knowledge actually about the various aspects related to reduction of GGH actually in two sectors, which we have been looking at as in hard to abate sectors of steel and cement. Just to give a background as to why we start this program is actually, we have been conducting knowledge sharing sessions for our member banks, basically on all aspects of ESG, and this has been going on for almost a year now. So we went back to our member banks and asked them actually, what is the sort of inputs that have been received by them, and what do they think is their current status, and we also asked for the way forward actually as to where they would like to go forward. So the feedback that we received was actually, when we started off, actually we were, actually without of any knowledge about ESG, and gradually it has built up. Actually, all the banks have built up, some capabilities actually as far as the ESG issues are concerned, and fairly established knowledge base has been secured. Okay, so what they decided was actually now we'll have to move to a specialized set of knowledge, actually more in a sectoral approach. Actually, so it is where actually we had a chat with Mr. Manish. Actually, has been kind enough to offer their your expertise actually in the technologies that are available for the reduction of the green gas emissions actually. In both the steel and cement sector. That's the background in which this whole program was conceived. Now, actually, see, we have in fact received a lot of inputs. Okay, to just to answer to Manish, so actually on my take on this session, we have indeed received a lot of inputs. Actually, we have now known actually what are the alternative technologies available actually, and to what extent it can help in reduction of the greenhouse gases. But the we are hardcore banking professionals. Now, our outlook is actually is there a viable financial model for both these sectors actually? So the problem for bankers is actually we always think in terms of a viable financial model actually based upon which you can look at the cash flows actually and look at what is going to be the the cash generation. And the cash generation will be adequate to take care of the repayment obligation of that project. These are the basic issues we look at actually whenever we finance any economic activity. Looking at that angle, actually, if you look at it, these being now very new technologies, we don't have any base. Really, there are no proven models that are available to us. Actually. In fact, that is the area in which I would request TERI to look at it. Actually, there are two ways in which you can help the banking industry. One is to have a technology demonstrator done actually on both these areas. At least I would like to have it in green steel and green hydrogen. Actually, if you can just immediately arrange for some sort of a technology demonstrator. And also we'll have to think in terms of the what is going to be the minimum quantity for manufacture actually to be economically viable. Like we had some discussion with the the Ministry of Renewable Energy, and they said actually we can take the quantum of 1 lakh million metric tons actually of green hydrogen as a basic viable model. Actually, that is the minimum that we can go down for it to be viable. So something like that actually, if we can look at a minimum production model, actually minimum capacity that is required to be installed actually to be viable. What is the most optimum technology that could be utilized actually, and then build a sort of a business model, and then arrive at a financial actually cash flow model actually. That will be of much help to the member banks actually in going forward in financing the ultimately the ultimate end of this all this session is to enable financing, to enable finance to flow to these sectors. So for my member banks actually that we have much help actually. That is reflected in the questions in this one also. How much will it impact on the cost of project, and is there any viability study? Then all these things are basically stemming from that aspect. Actually, people are looking at a financial model based upon which they can make a decision actually of financing this decision. So my request actually to TERI is actually if you can just look at either a business model, do a technology demonstrator in India, and let us based upon that arrive at a financial model. Or if there is any proven technology model available abroad, actually, can it be customized to the Indian situation actually? And then if you can just share it with us, actually, that would be very much helpful. Okay? But of course, your session was really very knowledgeable and very helpful to us actually to understand the direction in which it is going to go going forward. Actually, 2030 and 2050, probably where we are going to be, and how much we can reduce. Certain estimates are now actually visible to us. Okay. To that extent, it's definitely been very useful. Session has been very useful. To the member banks, actually, I would like to tell that we are in touch with TERI for some time now, actually, and they have been very kind to offer their services. Actually, And this is what happened today is just a beginning actually. So they have in fact actually agreed to talk to us actually in more sectors actually which are highly carbon intensive and high to abate sectors actually. So members can just can think back actually and then identify sectors where you require this sort of inputs and write to us actually. Then we will get in touch with TERI, try to arrange for future such sessions which will be useful to all of us. That is the request to the member banks. Just to conclude my address actually, I thank Mr. Girish Sethi for arranging for agreeing to host us actually co-host the event actually and sharing your knowledge with us. Definitely member banks will cherish this occasion actually and be thankful to you for the inputs that has been received by us. Our thanks also to Mr. Shobhan Babu and Madam Tarun Nidhanani for sharing their knowledge actually and making a very very lucid presentation actually. In very simple terms, that any stranger can also understand what are the nuances actually without being too technical, and that is really an art actually. So I thank them for the lovely presentations. I thank Manish actually immensely. Actually, he has been the go between us and TERI actually, and then he has been encouraging us to voice our requirements actually, so that he can arrange for that. So we have been engaging with him for some other areas also, but then this part of it actually will be appreciated by us actually because it benefits the bulk of our members actually. So thanks Manish actually for all the efforts that you have taken in organizing this lovely session. And I also thank member banks actually for coming in numbers actually, and I hope that they would have benefited by the session today. Overall, it has been a very very good effort actually on everybody's part actually. And I hope everybody would have been satisfied with today's actually efforts that has been taken by TERI and IBA. Thank you very much, and we look forward to more such sessions. And to my member banks, if you still have questions actually, you can either share it with Mr. Manish directly, or you can write to us also, and we'll take it up with Mr. Manish. And they have already agreed to address these questions actually, even in the next session. So potentially there is a chance for us to have one more session actually. So we are working on it. And if the member banks are wanting to have a session on a particular segment, please do write to us actually. Then we'll take it to Mr. Manish actually. We'll try to arrange for a session which is their need. Okay. So these few words, I conclude this session and thanks the TERI officials once again, and thank the member banks for coming in numbers and taking benefit of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would also take opportunity to thank colleagues at IBA, particularly Ms. Furti and Ms. Mukti for coordinating. Yeah, and my colleague at TERI, Ashmita and Uday, who have been coordinating in setting up these sessions. So thank you very much. I hope to.
Manish, just for a second, I forgot. I will be failing in my duty if I don't, thank Asmita and your other colleague. Actually, they have been contacting with us actually, and then they have laid the foundation for this session actually. So thanks to them also. I'm sorry I missed them actually in the first session.
No, that's. It has been a pleasure, and I really look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Good.